Hello gals and guys, thank you for coming to my channel. You may have heard the word deliverable floating around and you might have wondered, what does that really mean? This video is going to go through what a deliverable is and some common examples that you might have to provide in your design career. Let's get started. Alright, so what exactly is a deliverable? As the name suggests, you might come to the assumption that it is something that is delivered, and you would be correct. But not just anything you can deliver. So when we talk about deliverable in terms of design deliverable, we mean a sort of tangible, physical, digital artifact that you can send to someone, you can show to your stakeholders, you can use to talk about something. It's something that you put together to deliver to your team. You can think of a deliverable as something that you actually do, something that you make, something that isn't just in your brain or in the cloud or online somewhere. It is something that you put your time and energy in to make. And then, like I said, deliver. Got it? So if you think about like a writing assignment, maybe you had to do a book report. You read the book or you didn't, and then you had to deliver an essay about that book. So the essay is the deliverable, which is the result of all the work that you did beforehand, reading the book, and so on. All right, I think we got it. So now I'm gonna get into some common design deliverables that you may encounter if you are involved in UX design in any way. If you are a UX designer or do any part of the research and ideation in the beginning, you will probably be compiling a lot of data, and that means you have a bunch of stuff to pull from that somehow needs to be analyzed and put together in a document. So whether that is a report, whether you give a presentation, whatever that looks like, there are a lot of different ways. That is your deliverable. You are delivering the learnings and the findings from your research into some kind of document that you can pass along. Another really common one is called a persona. A persona is a collection of attributes of a person, typically representing a user or a group of users, a type of users that is going to be using your product. There may be more than one persona, there may just be one main one, but basically you're compiling a name, a photo, what they're into, what their demographics are, the challenges that they may have with a particular problem, what they're looking for, their sort of everyday life. So all these things compiled into a, again, document that really lays it all out. So this deliverable is fairly designed. It's not just text, it's usually got some images. You can get really creative with these. I've seen some really creative ones. But again, it is the collection of information about a user group. These typically aren't real actual people, they're just representations of the findings that you have from your UX research. Another common one is called an experience map, also known as a customer journey map. This also pulls from the research, but you basically are pulling together all the different ways a customer or a user may come to your product. So whether that's online or offline, what prompts them to do the first step and the next step and the next step and so on. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Where are they getting hung up? It's almost like a story of how they're going to get from A to B, where A is their problem and B is, now that they've used your product, they have a better outcome. These typically look like a big table, but they've got a good amount of text, maybe some arrows to kind of point out where things are flowing, and so on. The next one is a sitemap or information architecture document. So when we talk about information architecture, we mean how all of that content and information on your product or your website is going to be organized so that a user can find it. In the case of a website, it's commonly referred to as a sitemap. Now, this looks like a bunch of boxes connected together, again with some arrows or some way that you can visualize how things sort of work together. For a sitemap, for example, you usually have maybe the home page on the top, and then you have the top level navigation items directly underneath, and maybe under each navigation item there's sub-navigation items and so on. You can have information architecture that shows those main elements, but also maybe some global elements that happen on all pages of the website. But this document really helps when you're trying to sort of look at the content from a really big picture and see how it all fits together. You can also use a sitemap to test your navigation to make sure that how you've labeled and categorized things and grouped things together actually makes sense for when your user is going to interact with it. Super helpful deliverable. The next one's a little similar, and that is called a workflow or a user flow. It's almost a combination between a sitemap and a customer experience map in a way, but you're basically showing, again, some boxes, some lines. I think there's a trend here. Showing where the user starts and where they go from there, navigating through your product. It may not be a linear step 1, 2, 3, 4. It may be step 1, and if they choose option A, they now get options B, C, and D. If they choose option B, they now get options D, C, and F, and maybe those all combine and come together in some weird way. I don't know, but the user flow can get very detailed and very intricate because of all these different paths a user might take. What's important about this is that you start to see where all the little discrepancies may come up, where a user may get lost, how a user might need to connect from one point to another, and making sure that all fits together seamlessly so that nobody gets lost. And when you go to develop your product, no one's asking, wait, but what happens when they do this, this, and this? You don't want that to happen. So covering those scenarios in a workflow or user flow is super important. Again, seeing it big picture, down on paper, to talk about with your team is going to save you a lot of headache in the future. Okay, so another one that's more on the visual design side is a mood board, inspiration board, whatever you want to call it. Some kind of collection of visual inspiration. It's going to serve as some sort of library of visual language that you're going to pull from when you actually start to do the interface design. So in graphic design, this is typically called a mood board. In UI UX, this could be inspiration board, just a board. I don't know, pulling inspiration from all over the web, other products. Maybe you found an interaction of this other app that you think would work really well in your app, so you pull an image of that onto a board and you can reference it later. When all your inspiration starts to come together on a board, it's really cool to be able to step back and take a look at everything that's sort of going on in your brain, especially when you're trying to communicate to non-designers about the look and feel that you're going for. Having something that you both can look at and reference is going to be huge in bridging that gap and talking about design. Okay, now I want to talk about something called fidelity. And fidelity is kind of a measure of how polished something is. So you can have things that are very low fidelity, mid fidelity, and high fidelity. And I'm going to go through examples of each one. An example of a low fidelity deliverable would be something like a paper sketch, or I had this crazy idea at lunch and I scribbled something out on a napkin really quick, and that's technically a deliverable because you can deliver it to someone. Not that that's the only thing I would do, but it happens. Paper sketches, napkin sketches, whiteboard sketches, all these things are very low fidelity. They're rough. They're just raw ideas, not really refined. They're just getting the idea out. Do not discredit the importance of these though, because every great design usually starts with a sketch. I sketch all the time in my work, and it is the fastest way to see if something will work together without spending a whole lot of time going straight to a tool and making a really polished thing when you're not even sure it's going to actually turn out right. So yay sketching. All right, so sort of the next step up of fidelity would be something like a wireframe. So typically these are lines, boxes. You can get a little more detailed though, because you can start to pull in maybe image placeholders, text even, to kind of give your design some shape. These are still very rough, and that's why they're considered low fidelity usually, but they really serve a great purpose, and that is to relay the layout, the blueprint of the design going forward. Now, when I talk about mid fidelity, I mean sort of taking that wireframe, but bumping it up a little bit. So you can start to add in things like color, maybe some images. It's not fully polished, but you can sort of see how things are coming together, and it's going to look more like the final design than the straight wireframe did. So this prototype can be really useful when you want to test something out with a user. They can sort of get the sense of the design, even if it's not completely polished at this point. Now, when I talk about high fidelity, I mean high, beautiful, pixel perfect, everything is done. You don't want to touch it anymore because it's that done, that beautiful, that ready for development. That's what we call high fidelity. And I use the term comp, so when I say design comp, I mean a finished, high polished design document. Again, so it might be a flat JPEG or a PNG, it could be a link to a file. Either way, it's very high fidelity, and a developer can take that design and know exactly what to do when they go to build it. The last deliverable I want to cover is called a style guide or pattern library. This is not for every project, but for certain ones, they're going to have a lot of repeated components and styles across a system. So like a website or an app, for example, it's helpful to sort of consolidate your styles into one document. I really like doing this because I feel like it helps the developers be consistent and just get a really good foundation for common styles like type styles, like the color palette, like button styles, things that I know are going to be used over and over again in the design. Laying that out for them exactly how you want it. That way there's no questions when it comes to how that stuff all sort of works together. I would say these are the most common deliverables that I use, but if you have other deliverables that you have experience in, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. That is all I've got for you today. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. That helps people see it on YouTube. I'd really appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button if you'd like. Thanks again. I really hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.